Good afternoon, everybody here. I'm delighted and I'm so honored and privileged to be here. And I thank you, for introducing. And I think it was very kind of you to say all these things. But I'd like to spend more time. Please forgive me for if I go here, there, a little scattered. But my focus is one thing. How to become a good human being? We all good human beings. How to polish more and more to become better and better in our life. And that's the whole idea of the topic is, I was privileged and blessed that I met a lot of my friends with their company, with their books, the interaction, satsang, and so forth. I learned a lot. And what I'm presenting you today is, humbly, with your permission, my own experience, my own way of understanding the whole humanity, and which is called spirituality, to put into practice everyday life. And that's what I'm trying to present it. We start with one very simple thing, which is I'm sure you have all seen. And this is nothing, I don't belong, somebody asked me, what's your religion? I say, you are my religion. You means universal religion. So religion is for me is nothing but spirituality, the way of life, the whom I get my inspiration, my guidance, being born in Jain family, lived in India, and I expect a vows to everyone who has reached the stage of so-called Godhead. Gita has enormous impact on the way I learned from Gita, never been exposed to before, but it was a slide that really is, that I want to share with you. It says, it's all about life, and that's what we are here for. What is our life? How do we improve our life? Whatever time we have. Every human being has their own stage of development, and how to go from there and keep on going with it. So it says, life is a duty, perform it. Life is love, enjoy it. Life is tragedy, face it. Life is a struggle, fight. Life is a promise, fulfill it. Life is a game, play it. Life is a gift, accept it. Life is a journey, complete it. Life is a mystery, unfold it. Life is a goal, achieve it. Life is an opportunity, take it. Life is a puzzle, solve it. So here we are trying to solve the puzzle. How can we unfold it and understand the best way? Apart from understanding the knowledge, it's very important to put into practice. How we practice in our day-to-day, our minute to minute, our second to second in our life. That's why I chose this topic. What I plan to do is, I'd like to talk about a few things, which include the spirituality, which is what spirituality means to us. Two, what are the basic fundamentals? What is life is based on? The life is life, but what is the foundation of life that we should work on it? And that's what we call that, the value, universal value. And if you look at the universal value index, is it says that universal value index is a practical application in our daily lives. And I thought of this term. Please, there's nobody else that has really. I just thought of what is the UV index is. You see in the paper every day, temperature such and such, UV index such and such. Please protect yourself from the sun. This is a more protective sense, how we protect ourselves. This kind of universal value index in our day-to-day living. These values are, the reason are the universal values. They are immortal. They are irreversible. And they cannot be challenged in any court of law. And that's why it's called universal. Common to all human beings. We don't know whether common to all beings, but at least we know human beings. And this is doesn't matter what religion, culture, education, ethical background you come from. These values are universal, immortal, irreversible, and cannot be challenged in any court of law. And the purpose is, what is the whole purpose about these values are? As he said, he saw the other slide of the life. And we want to build our life from the day one we were born. And which is the help of our parents and the teachers and other people that we become independent. The purpose is to bring about a quiet, content, simple, non-demanding, non-protecting mind from being free from likes and dislikes. The mind, we are the only human being which is given to us so-called the mind. And the mind is very important to have that kind of the way I see the mind, I think my son, who's very close, he loves to read Swami Vivekananda's teachings. He went to visit this little island and got a print for me, knowing that I was a psychiatrist, to say, mind your mind. That was what Swami Vivekananda said. And the mind is a very important thing in our thing. And I divide the mind as follows. First word, the mind is the mastery, how we control, discipline ourselves. The motivation, how we motivate ourselves to achieve something, whatever we want to achieve. And meditation is calmness of the mind. How to, it's like a nice lake where quietly, you throw the stones in the lake, it certainly shows all the waves. How to keep the mind quiet every time, every second, and we have a duty and responsibility to do so. For this thing, looking for, the mind is like inner eye. We have two outer eyes. My friend is an ophthalmologist, and when I realized that I cannot see from long distance, he gave me beautiful glasses, everything changed. So inner eye, mind is like inner eye. What we see from inner eye, if an inner eye is defective due to negative thoughts or feelings, what we see from the inner eye is clouded by the inner eye thoughts. So that's why we call inner eye, if we have a nice glasses, give it to the mind, and then the good thoughts, the whole thing is what you project, what you perceive is totally different. And it shows, it makes us to initiate something, and also integration and intelligence to understand the situation at that time. And it's extremely most important for the mind is, which is only says two things here, non-violent. Very important, how we keep minds, which affects our attitudes and behavior. And how we think. If we have negative thoughts, angry thoughts, aggressive thoughts, it projects outside with our words and actions. So neutrality, how we know neutrality means here is non-judgmental mind. We have tendency to see the duality of life. Somebody is bad, somebody is good, somebody is not good, somebody is in this color, somebody is black, white, whatever duality, temperature, everything. So our mind is like that. If we have two eyes, we have. When we see each other, we only see oneness with two eyes. We don't see two. If we see two, that means there's something wrong with our mind. The brain is not right. Either brain is diseased, or due to some medication, we see the double. We call it diplopia, double. And we have tendency, each of us, every time we divide duality of life, either bad or good, hot and cold, hate or love, or day and night. How we cultivate with this end, so-called non-judgmental, that we see oneness with that mind, inner eye. And that oneness is our duty to cultivate it and to make it that way. You can't be 100% perfect, but we have a duty to keep going as a process, to see the oneness with that eye. Then we have D as discipline, direction, devotion. And that's very important what Gita says. What does D means? What is our duty? Duty not only, we put a devotion into it, heart and mind. Whatever we do, in school work, college work, etc., we put it into heart devotion into it. Put it to get the duty to achieve something, we have to dedicate something. We have to sacrifice something, our pride, ego, our time, or our leisure, or a lot of pleasures and so forth to achieve something. It's dedication. And then we have to see what direction, focus, as how we focus things what we want to achieve. And then we have to discipline our mind, plus direction, the focus, discipline, devotion, dedication, and also with the most important thing, as Gita says, with the detached mind. We do our duty, we do with your devotion, dedication, direction, focus, discipline, but we don't expect anything in return. How we cultivate the detachment from the outcome of our actions. That is the beauty of detachment, whether people, persons, possession, property, anything that we can detach from ourselves, plus desireless mind, with no desires. If we go with open mind, no expectations, no desires, life becomes simple. You just walk as like and with no weight there, and continue to grow, and you feel so happy inside, and that happiness you share with other people in that direction. So that is the mind that we have. The most important thing in the mind is we take care of these things. I'm sure some of you play tennis. I call aces. Aces is that when we have served, it's a winner all the time. So mind has 4 functions. We have to cultivate awareness all the time. It's like walking meditation. We know what my thoughts are, my feelings are, what I'm going to say something, how I say, what I say, when I say, plus what my actions are, what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So this awareness is all the time to cultivate it. As the single most important thing in our mind functions, awareness. With awareness, we have the freedom to choose. Do you want to go destructive choices or do you want to constructive choices? That choices we have to make. How we make the right choices or wrong choices, that's up to us. We have the mind. We are the only human beings who have a mind, as we think. We are the only beings who's really, if you see all the beings, their head is down, our head is up. If we walk with our head up. The rest of the beings, they have their down. And the 3 reasons that our head is up. 1, thanks to our blessings that we have to grow any further. Second, we have to grow and grow up and up. And lastly, the thing that we feel proud of ourselves as what we achieve. So that is what we have choices to make, what we want to make choices. Third, equanimity, very important thing. It's like in physiology or in medicine, we call it homeostasis, keep balance. Equanimity is the single most important thing in my way of is how to maintain the sameness, even-mindedness. In spite of all the difficulties in our lives, in spite of all somebody's hurts our pride and ego and sensitivity and so forth, all the things you won the 1 million lottery or get high position, we remain the same. Keep this equanimity. This is a very important function to cultivate peace and happiness within us is equanimity. And of course, lastly, is how we cultivate selfless mind and sensitive in the mind in the sense that sensitive is the word that how we make other being comfortable, how we feel the pain of other people, how will we cause the least hurt if not make other being comfortable all the time. So this is the sensitive mind to be aware of it. So we have a duty and responsibility. Some people say, who are you? I say, I'm a doctor, DR. So I have a duty and responsibility. Same thing, other human being has this duty and responsibility to cultivate a mind with awareness. And then you can do choices, whether you want to make right or wrong choices, or you want to maintain and cultivate equanimity and selfless and sensitive mind. So this is the artery of the mind, which is so important for the universal values that we talk about. Then the question is, what is value? The value is a value which is valuable to me, valuable to us. What is important, valuable to us? Is a thing about thing, situation, or attitude. And it has got so-called universal ethical attitude, which is what is right and wrong. And a value is a value for us only when we see the value of the value as valuable to us. That's very important to remind us what is important value for us. If I have the right direction, it's not a materialistic gain, it's a peace, a happiness, inner thing you get by following some value. That's a permanent, that's yours, that cannot be taken away from you. That remains with you, cannot be stolen. But if suppose we cultivate something which is not the value, is something which is materialistic, that is temporary and transient in a way, and then we go through the fading process. So that is we call it, the value is value for us only when we see the value in this situation. So what are the important things? The values are the guidelines. Guidelines for us in performing actions, in conducting business, and in transaction with others, in any area of our life. It's like that. We suppose some of you are developers and want to build a 16-story beautiful building. The story of building cannot be built unless there is a strong foundation on it. The foundation looks very raw. We have bricks, we've got the cement, we've got the steel and iron rods. When you look at it, it looks very ordinary. While the building is ready, it's beautiful, so-called the help of the designer and the builder, and so it looks beautiful. But the building will not be built unless there is a strong foundation. But they build 16-story building or 1-story building. And the values are, these are the foundations of our life. Without that, we cannot live. Otherwise, we are on very shaky grounds, and we are exposing ourselves to a lot of grief, sorrow, unhappiness, and so forth. The Gita calls these values as jnana, which means knowledge. Jnana can be defined as a state of mind which reflects certain universal values and ethical attitudes. Discovery and assimilation of the values themselves constitute preparation of the mind. Because this is like a foundation. We talk about the mind. Mind cannot be meditative or calm mind. Mind cannot have good intentions or good integrity. Mind cannot have non-judgmental, non-violent mind. Mind can't do the duty, the devotion, dedication, something, unless we have these values which are the so-called the foundation of our faith. Discovery and assimilation of the values themselves constitute preparation of the mind. Values alone prepare the mind, and all else is secondary. Therefore, Gita raises the appropriate values to the system of knowledge. This is the description described by Harvey's book called Gita and Everyday Practice. And he describes very well how important these values are and how we can form our and this is also, if you look at the WHO definition of health. The WHO definition of health is, we have got Jesus Christ's cross, which is we have mind and we have body. We have a spiritual life and we have a social life. How to keep the balance and keep the healthy body and mind. The mind, as we talked about already, the meditating intentions, what is our non-judgmental. The social life, how we are sensitive and relationship, cultural values, interests, actions, and lifelong education that we do it. And the body, the body is the beautification, means hygiene, ongoing discipline, diet, exercise, sleep, and youthfulness, freshness of living. But one thing we really have difficulty teaching in medical school is here the spiritual life, which really not been taught, which is nothing, it's not religion, it's not this is the basic things of the human lives. And this is what we have to teach. We have a duty to our children, to us, unless we learn ours, which we all have, how can we, our children or our future generation, everything we learn from by our own examples. Selfless, simple, straightforward, patience, prayers, peace, integrity, trust and tolerance, universality, oneness with each other, and ahimsa, non-violence, and the love. This is what I work in a hospital called Women Health Science Center. And then I said, look, what are we working on? And its short form is LHSC. And that summarizes spirituality. L means the lovingness, no condition, no ifs and buts, like mother's love to the children only first 2 years of life. After that, we don't know what happens. And then we have H means humility and humbleness and humanity, how we cultivate and how to maintain. S means simplicity, straightforwardness, and selfless. And C means compassion, consideration, and caring for others. These are simple things. It looks very simple. But to put into practice is a challenge for every second before. When you're working, interacting with the family, interacting with our friends, interacting with our kids, and this is a challenge for us to how to keep in mind, cultivate awareness to do so. always ask questions, what are the gains we get in it? What are the losses in following a value in our life that require a deeper understanding of the purpose of life? And that's the question we have to ask. Every time we follow or we make compromise with the value. What are we doing it? Are we going to in conflict with something? We pay the price for the pain and suffering that we have to go in our mind. Or we want to live in peaceful, harmonious and life. So conflicts are born in our mind because we are not assimilated. It's like that. We are driving the car, and initially you're so shaky, you're afraid of driving. Once you learn to drive the car, and I've been back a few times in Toronto, you're afraid to drive in big town, it becomes second nature. You don't even think about it. It becomes a part of you. Even when you toss it somewhere else, it still becomes second. It's part of it. Same thing. The assimilation means how we assimilate these values in ourselves. That's become second nature. Nothing. The way we talk, the way we behave, the way we interact with people, the way we feel about each other, the way we is part of our nature and is assimilated. It's an expression of our values, what we have assimilated within us, which include humbleness, humility, compassion, non-violence, consideration to others, and so forth. And this is what we mean, the moral, ethical, and spiritual values passed on to us by the elders and orthodox without the logical and pragmatic understanding which is required in following them. That's very important to understand why this value is valuable for us. The expression of life is just the expression of one's well-assimilated value structure. And that's what we come across. We don't say some people are very good and bad because they have money or they have position or so forth. And nice people, they won't reach the position unless they have good values. The most important thing is how the person comes across. And that is the single most important thing is how the expression one's well-assimilated value structure. Assimilated personal value requires no choice of one's past. And life becomes simple, no conflicts throughout the mind, a value is said to be assimilated and is followed naturally. Because second part of the nature, these values become, for example, whatever value you take, we talk about in a few minutes, what are those values actually? And that's what we'd like to talk in a second. So summarizing so far, what we have, so we have this value. Value, summarizing, is values of values valuable. We have to accept this is nothing, these are a fundamental truth. It cannot be challenged. It cannot be argued. It's a value of value is valuable. These universal values we're talking about. A, acceptable conduct. Once we assimilate value, our conduct is so important. How it is accepted by us, ourselves, and other people. And how we apply relative assimilated value structure is a lifelong, right, from all our life, is a universal dharma. Dharma means, for me, is conduct. Is a standard or norm of conduct. Ethical standard, natural, inherent, and common are. This is the value what defined. Values are guidelines for people in performing actions, in conducting business, and transaction with others. And values are extremely necessary to prepare the mind for further knowledge, to get to know ourselves. And if you want to go further, the self-knowledge is the single most important thing that we want to achieve in human life. And without values, we cannot achieve that thing. We have to have assimilation of the values. If you look at this one, value is what are we ultimately? Suppose it doesn't matter what Lord we follow, Lord Krishna or Lord Jesus Christ or Lord Guru Nanak or Lord Mahavir, whatever. As Lord comes to us and asks us in this lifetime, please ask me one thing in this lifetime, what you want. Only one thing. What we ask the Lord of God about us this time. For me, it's most important to ask how I cultivate, maintain my peace and happiness within myself. It's not, and that is if that is my ultimate aim in our life, that's what I want to do, then we have a duty, a responsibility to cultivate and maintain this peace and happiness. And that is our responsibility, that's our choices, that is our conduct. So this mind, the values prepare the mind, quiet, content, non-projective, non-violent, free from dislikes, non-judgmental mind. If we prepare the mind with the structure of the value, what we are ultimately looking for is peace and happiness. So mind, as you described earlier on, is quite intellectual, neutral, distinct from external objects or happiness, because it can be distracted easily to all of us. Then we have to make choices whether we should go to pleasure principle or we go to peace principle, whichever we have a choice. So values are guidelines for people in performing actions in connected business, and as we said before, in transaction with other things. So mentioned earlier, summarizing again, the values are jnana, knowledge. A value nothing is a collection of qualities of the mind, and this gives you self-knowledge. And a number of ways to do it, as in our culture, so-called Indian culture, we have pranayama, breathing exercises. The whole thing is any culture to quietness of mind. It doesn't matter what practice we do, and we keep the restless mind. Then we asanas, posture, which are physical, the jnana, the values, the state of mind, which reflects certain universal values, and ethical attitude. And then we try to assimilate these values and prepare the mind for self-knowledge. And the important thing is we use the values. If we have values, and we assimilate it to some extent, we cultivate self-knowledge or may not have the self-knowledge. But if we have values plus continue, we have a good chance that we have self-knowledge. But if we don't have this value structure, there's no way that we could have the self-knowledge, which is very simple, and this will describe how important you have this so-called the foundation of your life, that's the values. Now, what are those other values that we have? I just mentioned a few of them, and I'll discuss a few of them, 2 or 3, which is very important. For example, humility. In Sanskrit, we call vinay, and it's so important in humility, it is the negation of vanity. Then unpretendedness, to set an example. We have there's 20 of them described in detail. Then we have non-injury, forbearance, straightforwardness. Service to the teacher, purity, steadiness, self-control, indifference to sense objects, absence of egoism, and non-attachment. I'll come back to some of them a little later. We have self-control, we have already discussed this one here. It's number 14. And identification of the self in son, life, home, and the rest is called attachment. Gita described this value as number 14. 15th is mindedness, and even-mindedness. We talk about equanimity. Single most important value that Gita subscribes, and this is most important in our day-to-day life. And then we have 16. We call it the Sanskrit word for that, which I difficult to pronounce it, but says that non-separation from the Lord. See the Lord everywhere, but we cannot separate ourselves from the Lord. And thus we know that we carry out our duties and actions as if He's there with us all the time. And last 2 slides, a number of other things is distaste in society for man means the company of good people, satsang. And it's quite important. You don't have to have 20 people to good. The important thing is that good people, good places, good films, good music, that is your how your mind works, that is decided by the way we think, the way we interact with people, what kind of people we attract. So these are some of these values and described, and these are 20 of them. But the summary of these values are that I described in the slides, and then we stop for a few minutes for discussion, then we go the other values quickly. This is called, I put them together, all the 20 values what we described is as follows. And we say the values are valuable. Why these values are valuable? Describe that first, it's not in order. Teacher, service to teacher, doesn't matter who the teacher is. And anybody who learn from the people, especially the teacher, how you start and service to them. Human being, absence of craving for the company of people. Emptiness, cleanliness, how we clean our mind and body, as we do clean our mind, body, same thing in our mind. All the negative thoughts and feelings and so forth. Victory, master of poor mind, absence of self-worshipfulness, linear straightness, universal detachment, egoism, absence of egoism, steadiness, non-injury, ahimsa, according to quiet place, even-mindedness, this is for equanimity, victory, dispassion towards sense objects, absence of pretense, landlord, absence of sense of ownership, universal truth, knowledge of the truth, accommodation, and work, these are the part of the our people circle of life, devotion to Lord, non-separation from him or her, ego, knowledge of the true self. So these are the 20 values that describe in Gita, which is put into in a little simpler way to my mind to remember myself. And this is the simple 20 values. But the values are, I call it, the values are valuable. And this is what described in short. What are the values, 20 values in Gita described, which we call universal values. And the more we have these values, every morning we get up, what is my UV index today? And what's going to be my UV index by the end of the day? And examine again, introspection. So if we close our 2 eyes, we open our 4 or 5 eyes inside. Eye 1, introspection. Examine where I was, where I am, where I want to go. 2, once use intelligence, understanding the situation, what leads and what happened. If I did this thing, what are the consequences of my actions and so forth. Third eye, we have to open it. We call it intentions, which is wisdom. Decide what is right and wrong, what I've done, what's not right. Only when we know, we go back inside. Fourth one is we say we take the so-called intention, the initiative. How I respond to, what action I want to take to go. So every day, even for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, even all the time that we have time, we look at our UV index. What is my UV index? Where did I make the compromises? What did I do which is not right or wrong? And only by awareness, we can decide what choices we want to make. But we have to have a foundation. If we don't have the foundation, we can teach our children the so-called UV index. Doesn't matter where they go. They go to New York City or they go to any city, they can stand over because they have a sense of self, universal values in their things, and reflects in day-to-day interaction with people and their work, their studies, their school, whatever, and so forth. And even for all of us, this is what every day we have to do. So we have to all the time look back, open our 4 eyes, shut our 2 eyes, outside eyes, and watch where we are now. But I will stop a few minutes, please, for your comments, interaction. Then I can go for the next part of the movement, and I'd love to hear what your views are, and so that we get a little more time to. I'd like to see what are the things we can learn from you people. Yeah.
I have a question. I mean, it's silly. I was under the impression that values were distinct from ethics, and in the presentation, the two were a little bit blurred. So I was wondering if you could juxtapose them or explain them in such a way, just describe each of them for me. the definition of values versus the definition of ethics, whether they're the same thing?
The ethics are built on the values.
Okay.
We can't have ethics without values. How can we, if you're not truthfulness, if there's injury, or we are hurting anybody all the time, and if there is, suppose there's no compassion, there's no kindness, there's no consideration to other people, and there is no forgiveness, then how can we be ethical? The values are the foundation for ethical principles. Moral, that's why we call them values. Human values, ethical, we call the moral values, and the spiritual values. I call it HMS. His or her master's services. And then we call human values, moral values, and spiritual values, or values itself, HMV, that his master's voice. And these are built into his or her masters through the values. And we have a duty to reflect these things in every thought, every feeling, every verse, and every action. And that's become part of a second meaning.
So values are essentially the foundation, and then the ethical principles sort of
The
stem
ethical
from
principles, we built on these, without the values, they become ill.
Okay.
Ethical is what we do in day-to-day things. But if we have, most important thing is these values, the universal values, which is classified human values, social values, or ethical values, or whatever you call it. But this has to be the single most important is foundation universal. That's what Peter says.
Now, does that make either transient, though? I mean, can the values...
This the question is, how much one make an effort to assimilate? How many compromises you make every day? This could be, if it's assimilated totally, then you'll be second nature, you don't even think about it. It comes so natural. But if not assimilated properly, then there's a conflict. That I should do this or should not do this. That I should say this thing or not is the right thing. This conflict leaves a lot of pain and suffering. And unless we assimilate these values, till we become our second nature, we don't even think about it. It shows our conduct, in our behavior, in the way we talk, the way we interact with each other, the way we feel towards each other. It's become a simple straight line, like alignment with our thinking, with our feeling, with our words and action. Total alignment. Unless there's alignment there, we will not be living around, and that's the conflict comes. Then the trouble comes, the pain, which along with the conflict comes.
Thank you.
You seem to have given a very heavy-duty medical prescription for following values. If I ask you a question,
Please.
What is the single most important value that if I followed, it will fix 80% of my life? What would that be?
Very important to me, coming from background, if so-called non-violence background. If I follow one value, how did my thoughts, my feelings, my words, and my actions, how make other being comfortable, make other being feel happy. If I have that value, then I make sure I will not say the truth, I will not say lie because it hurts somebody. My conduct will be simple, my words will be simple, and my compassion will be there, my caring will be there, my consideration will be there, and my kindness will be there because I don't want to hurt any being for that matter. And take one value, they are so interrelated. It's like I take one bead, it goes into another one, it follows. It has to follow. There's no other way, because it's natural path to follow. So that is what it is. So take one value, and it just comes so automatically, then you think, my God, if I have non-violence in my value, most important, if I'm not, if I take care of it, I don't hurt any being, or I make other being comfortable, then actually all the values come together. It's like a what do you call it, together, clustered together. That's kind of cool.
Thank you.
What you have described is just beautiful, and it's so nice to see how religion and psychiatry come together and how Hindu values. But what puzzles me is the fact that our culture has given so much, literature has given so much of values and beautiful values, but there's so much dichotomy existing in human behavior. Can you explain why?
But this is what we have, we were talking about, the duality of life. If you learn from nature, we have two eyes, we see one view. Our mind is inner eye, which sees the duality. And the duality is as follows. If I can find my slides for that. Is, for example, if you look at the duality is love and hate, or pain and pleasure, or anything day and night. If you prepare our mind with a strong value structure there, prepare your mind, that how I keep mind, human minds, equanimity, see the oneness of each thing. Although they're there, the reality is there, we're seeing it, but our mind see the reality, how we cultivate even-mindedness. Equanimity is the single most important value that we can develop. The problem is that duality we see that we are so easily get into choices to make. Do you want to make choices to have a pleasure, or do you want a pleasure for worth paying, or do you want to have choices to go the destructive route or constructive route? As I said, awareness of the mind and choices we have.
And for that, I'm questioning about the authoritarianism in culture, where there is no allowance for the choice. There is a sense of abandonment if you disrespect or if you question some authority. It does not allow sometimes. And sometimes I find that people just follow those rigidly, and then their behavior is totally different. This dichotomy is continuously present.
Yeah, that comes to again back to us.
Yeah.
The ball is in our court. Do I depend on what people? Or do I cultivate? You ask two questions. One question is, in any situation which we are in, and if any situation comes to me, can I change something or cannot I change? If I have beautiful weather and it is a thunderstorm and I'm shouting, what kind of weather is this? Then I ask the question, why am I shouting? Why am I can I change something? So we ask our first question, can I change in this situation something or cannot change? 90% chances there that we can change. 10% chances there that we can change by own actions, by own so-called mentorship, the way we do them. Second question, which is a very deep question. What is in this life is that we live on the fear. We live on how the other people perceive us. And we are so self-conscious, sensitive to other people, negative sensitivity, that how the other people perceive us. How we depend on other people's approval, socially, physically, professionally, otherwise. And that is the single most important difficulty that we face. Second question we have to ask, what is in this life? First life is duty. What is in this life is temporary. What is permanent? First, very important deep question to ask. Then we have to ask, what is temporary in this life? Temporary I call 7 P's. People in our life come and go, very important people. And we see that they move away or something happens to them. Persons in our life, which are very important persons, they come and go. Possessions in our life today, if you own this house, tomorrow somebody else taking over. Property, possessions, position. Today I have position, tomorrow I do not have position. Next, our most important thing in our things, pride and prestige. If we value our pride and prestige, if somebody says anything, if you value so much, if somebody thrown down and you get traumatized. Physical health, fortunately we all healthy today, tomorrow we don't know. And then psychological. So these are 7 P's which temporarily, transient, come and go. If we focus on them, we are attached to them, then nothing but the grieving process comes up. But if you think of what is permanent in this life, I call it capital P, which is in the center of all the 7 P's that are going on, which is really peace. And principle central living. How we live with universal values, to cultivate the peace. If we have to change our center from periphery to the main center, but at the same time we have a duty to look after people, person, possession, property, whatever we get it, but not get attached, but remain detached. That is there, we do our duty, whatever comes. Realizing self-knowledge, realizing this is temporary, realizing this we cannot hold it. What is permanent, which we can cultivate it, we have to maintain it, and nobody can take away, nobody can steal away, you can buy and borrow and rent these things. So that's the very important question you have to ask. And the whole idea is, what do you want in our life? Do you want peace, happiness, harmony? And if you want to come here, I call it the awareness to cultivate this so-called number of things you can do. You can start. I'm sure I'm going to challenge some of you. You can start our university PhD program. That is really, if I have to start my own life again, which I almost did my PhD in medicine, which fortunately completed. And this is what I'd like to enroll myself, which I'm trying to do that. But we have a lot of prerequisition. If you do your BA, BSc, and the BSMD degree, you have to have a prerequisition to go to that course. For PhD program, we have a position how to build our universal values. On the basis of universal values, realizing what is right and wrong, what is temporary, what is permanent, what is that I. So we have to, by doing D, duty, devotion, discipline, dedication, determination, and direction, but test and desirous mind. We cultivate for peace and harmony. And that is what we have. And we have peace and harmony. I'm sure you have seen this slide too. And that brings the peace and home recipe. But we see this, we always rather than a beautiful recipe every day, which is so kind of you people do that. But most important for us is really is to look at this beautiful home is 4 cups of love, loyalty, forgiveness, friendship, spoons of hope, tenderness, faith, and laughter. Take love and loyalty, mix it thoroughly with faith. Blend it with tenderness, kindness, understanding. Add friendship and hope, sprinkle vanity with laughter. Bake it with sunshine, serve daily with generous helping. And that's what we are looking at. How happy we will be there. How happy we will all be there. Then once we are happy and contented inside, our requirements are minimum. Because we satisfy. Suppose you all came with beautiful, having lunch today. And then you go to your friend's party, then you have another big, huge thing. You don't even want to look at this thing because you're so saturated. You're so contented inside. If you're contented with happiness and peace inside, our requirements for materialistic thing, position, property, and so forth, not necessarily complex. If I have, doesn't matter. I appreciate it and I do my duty. If I don't have, doesn't matter. Then it's like this thing. And that is what we are looking for, is so-called happiness and home and for life in general. And as one author says here, this is very important. I enjoy the slide that I'm sharing with you. What we have is, and again, everything is built on, all these slides are built on, everything is on universal values. Nothing but anything, any writings you take, any philosophy you take, any religion you take. And this, for example, says human dharma, means duty or is 4 things to talk about: compassion, truth, peace, and non-injury. Compassion is based on, in practice, about 6 expressions. And this is what all seeing all these values. Serving one's fellow being, giving alms, great pleasantness, speech and disposition, courtesy, humility, and so forth. Equanimity, truth, same kind of things. And it's not truth what you say, but all other things which go along with this. For example, kindness and cheerfulness in speech, service to one's teachers, parents, and kinsmen, firm respect and moral law and order, faith, fellowship of the virtuous, and so forth. So peace and joy is the natural outcome, and truth is thus expressed in non-joy, which is non-violence. So what you see, these values are the joy of, it gives you what nothing but the joy of living. And if you want to have a joy in your life, want to live, it's part of you. That doesn't mean that you detach yourself, go in general. You can still stay in this life. But the whole idea is that we don't deviate from our very basic foundation, which is universal value. And you can build up anything. You can build your power in politics. As Nandi said, if you want to do it, you can do it. And that was a major thing. But what Gandhi said, you can do all these things. So, but if you do have cultivate wealth without work, that's 7 sins. Or the 7 moral sins. Pleasure without conscience. Science without humility. And psychiatry is the branch somebody mentioned to me, is psychiatry is the science with humanity. Based on the science, but it's a humanity which is springing over what comes across. Without that, any science is useless. Knowledge without character. We can have very knowledgeable, or we are arrogant, egoistic, and so forth. Then it becomes diluted. Commerce without morality. Politics without principles. Worship without sacrifice. We have religiosity, we worship together, unless we sacrifice insanity for only values, that we have to sacrifice a lot of things. It looks like a temporary, transient, we lose something, but we are gaining lots and lots of things. And that's very important. And that's one of these slides that Mahatma Gandhi put it there, which is very important to, and if you want to have peace of mind, which is really so important, as we all have, if you do these. And this is a very practical approach for our evening task. First, you don't interfere in other business unless asked. Two, give and forget. Very important value in your life. Give and forget. To remove third, do not pray for recognition. Do not be jealous. Change yourself according to the situation. Endure which cannot be cured. Do not take more responsibility than you can handle. Meditate regularly. Meditate means this minute, 20 minutes you sit down. Meditate means cultivating an awareness, whether you sit on the corner or whether you're aware all the time of the thoughts and feelings. And never leave the mind idle. Keep yourself, do not procrastinate and never forget. These are some of the commandments of so-called peace, to cultivate and maintain peace of mind. And the single most important thing is really, which I find it, very useful quote from one of the things called one's attitude. And says, the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude in life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. But the remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the string we have, and it's our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you, and we are in change of our attitude. And that's as Charles Swindoll said. I was very kind enough to give him this slide, one of my nurses I used to work, and I really thanks her to make me aware of it, how important it is to have one's attitude to go on with our life. And I had the privilege to put this attitude together in different ways. And that is, we cultivate awareness. 2, we think with open mind. 3, we think for others. I is look at our intentions all the time in my head. What's my intention behind it? Next, think constructively. Universal values is all things based on very important things that we talk about in universal values. We develop a habit, and we do the things, what we do, how we do, and when we do. Same thing we talk, what we say, how we say, when we say. Very important to cultivate expectations. Ideally, if we have no expectation, life is so easy. But we build up expectation, it's happy every day. If I expect my wife to be so good to you, to relax you, expect every day that she to make a beautiful meal, and have expectation, and I get disappointed. But if I love somebody and respect somebody, no expectation, no ifs and buts. It's like, and that's very important to have, that we won't get, what happens is we have expectation, but the expectation on that, it follows, the following things happen. First, we get disappointed. Second, we get frustrated. Third, we get annoyed. Fourth, we get irritable. Fifth, we get angry. The mercury is going up. And then we get aggressive. And then we need to be acting out, both verbally and physically. And that's what the whole anger issues comes up. And we talk about 2 or 3 things about reaction. So then we have selfish and selfless. This is, if we make our mind in such a way that we have this attitude, that we cultivate that way. And this has to be cultivated. Otherwise, if it don't cultivate, we get into, we're not following our universal values in any way. Any questions while we are, I'm sorry.
I have a question on that slide. You were saying that if we don't have expectations, obviously we're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And if we don't expect things, at the people we love. What about expecting people to just treat you with respect? I mean, that's an issue of self-respect.
Again, you're expecting from other people to respect.
So you're saying that
The whole idea is ideally, we're far from idealism in this life. If we say, okay, these are minimum expectations. Suppose if I have my children, and I said they dream and expect them to become, they go to the MBA program or have most of parents do it. But if I say, these are my minimum expectations, as long as they remain a good human being, that's it. No more whether they become a construction worker or they become a cleaner or whatever they become, as long as they remain human being, the minimum expectation that I have. Just example.
Okay, so in the case of respect, how would that, do you have to command the respect of
Respect is
you?
what we earn respect. We don't ask, we don't, if we demand respect, you will never get it.
You have to kind of
We have to earn respect with our conduct. And conduct is behind for conduct is our universal values. And if you ask somebody, it's like that. It says a beautiful sun in the morning, coming from the east, which always comes. And most of us in this room, we worship sun because it gives us a light. Okay? So we stand on the sun. And in front of the sun, our shadow is behind us. Then if the sun is behind us, the shadow is in front of us. Unless the sun is just in front of us. The whole idea is what the philosophy says. If we have focus, our shadow is behind us. Our pride, prestige, people, ourselves, respect, everything will follow you. They will not catch you. Because the shadow cannot catch you because you're following. But if your focus is behind you, lose your focus, you keep on running after the shadow, which is false. Pride, prestige, position, something, but you will not catch them. The whole idea is you do your duty with determination and focus, direction. And whatever comes in your way, accept as a blessing, rather than expecting it. I did it. And that's the whole principle of nature's principle. Nature is nothing but God. Nature is nothing but God.
But what will the driving force then for us to do something?
That's what we call emotional intelligence.
No, what are you saying? But life is driving force to do something.
And that's what the duty is. If we believe, we can't take one aspect of it. We're doing the Gita says, do your duty. Don't sit idle. Don't sit total. We have to be active. And this is what we have to cultivate emotional intelligence, which is part of it. Emotional intelligence is, if we don't have emotional intelligence, we are in a big mess. Mess is M-E-S-S-S. M for emotion. We may be highly intelligent, but we don't have emotional intelligence. We cannot. So how we love each other, how we feel pain for each other. A number of S's of messes, our self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, our sensitivity towards other people, our self-contentment, self-esteem, self-confidence. This we have to cultivate from the day one till we have the last breath. Intelligence stops at a certain age according to science, but emotional intelligence we have to keep on and on and on and on. Without that, it's like that. Suppose if I have to hire 2 people, one is highly intelligent, published 20 papers, 30 papers, and has done well. Got references that there's been very good, this Italian guy who's very good teacher, whatever. I say, but there are some difficulties in the personal relationship, teamwork, and has difficulty about the, Another person who not only published 10 papers, good teacher, but has been sincere, hardworking, reliable, dependable. If you ask him at 4 o'clock, he'll be there, and it's been so pleasure to have him. He's so respectful. The question is, who do we hire? That's the question of emotional intelligence. The motivation, the empathy, social skills, awareness, sensitivity, self-contentment, self-esteem, self-confidence. And that's what the duty is. Do your duty. Keep on and on and on and on. Persistently, perseverance for that, and practice the prayers also, and the patience. Don't think about results. If we learn to be patient, that's why I call we are impatient. We divide the word impatient, fracture the word, and say, I am patient. It doesn't matter. The whole idea is, the whole philosophy is, you do your work. Failure is our mind, but how I see the failure or success, then we have to cultivate it from duality to even-mindedness, to equanimity. We take the things, failure or success in the same way, hot and cold in the same way, pain and pleasure in the same way. This is, it looks big, but we have to cultivate. We have to keep on.
Try to stick. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist.
No, it looks that way. But we have to start somewhere. And what happens? It's a question of being aware. What do you want? Do you want peace and happiness in our life? Your PhD by duty and so forth. And that's the question you have to ask.
Could you give me some idea about the tolerance, the aspect of tolerance and the boundaries around it?
Say it again, please.
Tolerance and boundaries around it.
Can you pick up the mic, please, Dr.
Sure.
Thank you.
The tolerance is like that. If you want to have a relationship with each other, first thing, whether it's kids or whether it is our spouses or anyone for that matter, we have to have a pact. Unless we have a pact, we cannot. A pact is as follows. Pact is we have to have patience. We have to practice with persistence to cultivate this relationship. Persistence. A is being aware. Yes, I want to have this relationship. C is what we call it compassion, consideration, and control, discipline. How we say, what we say, when we say. How we do, when we do, what we do. And last word, which you said, tolerance, T. Tolerance has got 3 components. 4. I call it AAA batteries. If you want a stronger one, you can add another A on it. The tolerance is first, conscious process is accepting the person as they are, consciously, deliberately. Second A is accommodation. Accommodate as best you can do. It's a conscious process, voluntary process that you decide. Third A is adjustment. Adjustment depends on nature. If you're too inflexible by nature, too rigid, too obsessional, you cannot make compromises, you see black and white, we have less chance of a so-called adjustment. But we do keep on increasing the adjustment. But you have 2 things consciously, accepting and accommodating. And lastly, you want to have strong core batteries, appreciate what the other person did here, not what they don't do. So appreciation is very important, then you develop tolerance.
But if it goes way beyond all these 4 batteries,
Yes.
is there
You have to charge the batteries. We have to charge the batteries. Some of the batteries supply. Then you have to look back. So how can I bring back these? These are very fundamental, basic values. 1, accepting people as they are, accommodating, adjusting, and appreciating. It's very important. If we see how much one has fullness, not how much is emptiness. And that changes the mind, the way it feels. Yeah, please.
Does tolerance have a negative connotation? When you say you're going to tolerate somebody, it's like they're not on the same level as you and you're tolerating.
The question is tolerance. The question is what's your intention behind your tolerances. If I look at the intentions, I'm tolerating because he's a bad person. But if it comes within us, with good faith and fears, yes, how can I learn to be connected with this person? Without making judgment is bad or wrong, or is bad or good. Because when judgment comes non-judgmental, then it becomes negative one. But if it comes positively, how can I work towards it? How can I connect with this person? How can I live with this person?
That wouldn't be tolerance.
That would be part of the 4 A's. Accepting and just accommodating, adjusting, and appreciating. That becomes part.
How do you see, in society, it seems to me that we tend to stuff a lot of information point in everyone's life. It's all about stuffing information into one's head. And where do we get freedom from that in terms of one of the philosophies is to go from the head to the heart. And with a lot of information, over-information, it becomes like gruel, become like intellectual diagrams that separate us from experiencing life. Where do you see that?
Yeah, I think important is that always remember what simpler the life is, the better it is. And principles are always very simple, but follow them and persistently, consistently, constantly, and continuously are difficult. Because we have to have some form of steadiness. So if suppose you make a simple life as the last beat, what is the one value that you'd like to do that? Suppose if I decide most important for me personally is that how I make other people comfortable. The way I speak, how I say, when I say, what I do, how I do, when I do. Even I'm angry sometimes, my thoughts are angry, but the mind, as I said, mind that then I have controlled my speech, my action. I may not control my thoughts and feelings at that time by interacting with people, getting angry because somebody hurt my feelings. But at the same time, I deliberately, consciously, voluntarily decide whatever happens, I have to continue how I say, what I say, when I say, so that I can make other people comfortable. And then gradually what happens is, gradually, that you realize that you do it constantly, the other person sees that I've been always consistently good, say good thing, and speak different, same way.
Do these values come naturally versus intellectually? Do they come when you talk about going inside oneself and experiencing that? Is that just naturally okay?
That's
Values.
Yeah. It's our nature. Each human being, the way learned, has got these good qualities, potentials. But what happens is we test it and masked by a number of layers of contamination that we've gone through. The layer of contamination we call conditioning in our life. So much conditioning is going on, so we have to mask our actions part of it. And that is called the difficulty. For example, if I look at this one here, I can find my slide of business. Here it is.
For example, I was going to say, if you're one thing about love, we can talk about love, we can intellectualize about love. But if you haven't had that experience within yourself, you won't recognize it.
I understand completely. But important is that by nature, by human nature, we all have built in these things. The only thing is, unfortunately, the experience we had from -9 months to that age, we have so much, if we have a normal condition, layer of conditioning that has been masked in so much. Reaction is like that. If you look at this reaction, just focus on RCA. I don't belong to the company, I'm not advertising it, but I'm just saying to say it. Most of us, when we act or react, reflexes, without thinking, just say something or do something. Just like I put my hands in front of somebody's eyes, reflex comes. C is the conditioning what happened to our life from -9 months to today. A lot of positive events, a lot of, so we call psychosocial development, a lot of negative things. And we are product of the two things. 80% of the time when we acted or reacted is through R and C, our reflexes and conditioning. But the most wise, the most mature ways to do is A, action. So what we have to cultivate, rather than suddenly somebody says something, we shout back, we shoot back. For wise action A, to build up this capital A, we go back, as I mentioned earlier on, we open our 4 eyes, go back, introspection. use our intelligence. If I act or react or say these things to the person, what will the consequences on me and my relationship? 3, use our intention, which is wisdom. What is right and wrong at this point in time? Only if we know our intention, nobody else will know. And lastly, we take an action, initiate. Say, okay, well, after things, if other person perceives something not done, say, I'm sorry, I have wrong perception. I can assure you, reassure you, my intention was not there to touch it. If I have perceived that, please accept my forgiveness. Please forgive me, accept my apologies, whatever. So that way, you're diffusing your so-called reaction into action. Now, if you look at the reaction versus action, RE of the reaction is so powerful. R is rage, resentment. You carry so much built in, immediately or in the past. E is our emotions, which go along with that. They're so powerful that really masks our ability to act properly. You see the actions here. So they say, this is so powerful that masks the action part of it if we don't act properly. So what we have to cultivate is, be aware of it, we diffuse or dilute or delete and R&D as best we can do, and cultivate like muscle destroys, which you develop muscle development in the athletes, actions. How we act, what we say, what we act, how we do, what we do, when we do. And if we do that, then our chances of reaction R and C which we have will become much less. It will not be perfect, but it will become less and less and less.
But this is always a place for healthy anger.
So into anger.
Okay.
Yeah. What's healthy or unhealthy? Tell me about healthy anger. I'll just take my flies out.
I think I'd like to restrict to one more question, and then we'll ask Dr. Jain to wrap up because, please.
Sure. Just my last slide. I'll try to see this. If you look at anger,
Danger.
is only one letter away from danger. So we have to remind ourselves, are we dangerous zone or destructive zone? And the way I see it, that I learned, if you look at the root causes of anger, so what we have to do, if we have a danger zone, use the same key. How do I dilute my anger, discipline my anger, displace my anger, diffuse my anger, and direct my anger in a positive way. A lot of people say, oh, go and punch your bag. Chances are, next time you punch somebody else. So what we have is anger. If you look at the cause of anger, deep-rooted cause of anger that we have, our animosity. Somebody has said something, you're sensitive, and you keep on carrying this animosity with you. Our needs, the more needs and needs we have, only out of 10, if 1 is fulfilled, 9 is not fulfilled, then we get disappointed, frustrated, annoyed, irritable, angry, and so forth. Then we have our ego and pride. This is the worst part of the anger. The more ego and pride we carry on stage, how can I say something to you? How can I do something? The more angry we become. And resentment, we carry on. If somebody has done something in the past, we carry on this animosity and resentment, our needs and greeds and an ego. This is the single most fundamental cause of our built-in anger and perpetuating anger. So what is the prescription? RX for that is we cultivate amity, lovingness. If we cultivate lovingness, how can we become angry? I'm talking about not a perfection word, relative word. And if we cultivate non-violent attitude, as we just said, of course, then how can we become angry? Because it's totally incompatible with my way of thinking and conducting. Then we became gentle and giving and forgiving. This is totally antidote for the anger. Equanimity. If we keep our balance, even be up and down, be angry and upset, if we maintain our equanimity, then chances of getting angry is much less. And then we have respect and reverence to every being. The chances of becoming angry are much less. If we cultivate built in there and keep on and on and on, chances are we live a very non-violent society, non-violent home, non-violent person ourselves. And that is the whole idea, is to our philosophy, is to become really built in a non-violent person. Even by thinking let alone by words and action. We remain sort of not hiding. So I'll probably stop here. And
Well, thank you so much. I'm sure Dr. Jain is going to remain here for the next half an hour at least. I want to make this short and sweet because I don't want to stand between you and high tea. I'd like to thank Dr. Jain for giving us lots of food for thought in talking to us about life and its many facets, and giving us a framework of principles, of values, and indeed some recipes to help us navigate through life's sometimes extremely complex mazes. We hope that this talk has helped raise our knowledge and awareness, influenced our attitude, and we hope that it will affect our behavior for the better in the future. Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. I would now